Hello, and welcome to AMA, Ask Media Anything. I'm Bill Davey. I serve as a professor at the University of Louisiana Lafayette in the Department of Communication and coordinate the broadcasting program. We want to thank you for joining us for this conversation between local media professionals and you, the audience. The 2018 Poehler Media Trust Survey has shown us that local media outlets are more trusted by a majority of Americans than national media. And in our community, I think it's easy to understand why. Lafayette has trust in the local media, not only in providing us news of important issues and events, but they're also active participants and supporters of our community. So who better to answer your questions and some of our own tonight than local experts with the media. Here tonight to share their insight and answer some of your questions, we have Kristin Askelson, News Director and Content Strategist for the Daily Advertiser, and Tom Poehler, Vice President of Television at Delta Media Corporation. Hello, Kristin.
Good evening.
Tom.
Dr. Davey.
A little bit about our two guests. Kristin Askelson has been a veteran in journalism for over 20 years and has worked as an editor for the Hamilton Journal-News, the Fayetteville Observer, and the Daily Advertiser. Now she's busy strategizing content and serving as news director here in Lafayette. Tom is a 30-year veteran of broadcast television, beginning as an account executive. He also holds a degree from UL Lafayette and has been involved in station management, marketing, building sales teams, and acquiring affiliations. His title now is Vice President of Television for Delta Media Corporation. So, tonight's program is about facilitating conversation between the producers of media and you, the audience. If you have a question for our guests during this live program, please feel free to go to hashtag HOC Free Speech Week or AMA Kristin or AMA Tom to ask them questions on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And you can just call us at 337-366-8951. Well, let's get down to it tonight. We have already some questions coming in from local viewers. So I think I will start with Kristin with this first question. What advice would you give to a nonprofit or a civic group when they submit a press release to your business?
You know, that's actually changed over the years. And lately, what I tell people is just call us so that we can have a better idea of what it is that your group is trying to do and what message you're trying to get out. Because sometimes what you want isn't a story or an ad. Sometimes what you want is a Facebook post. Or something. Sometimes what you want is a photo. And so if we can just have that conversation, I can help you get what you need and, facilitate whatever that is. But for years, people have said, I need a story about this, or I need an ad about this. And sometimes those words have been interchangeable in strange ways. But anymore, it's about reaching audience. So tell me what you're trying to do, and I can maybe help you reach audience.
When you look at a press release and then you turn to your Facebook page, which you're instrumental in updating, what is your first thought? I need to first verify the press release before I put it up, or is there a protocol that you follow?
Yeah. So depending on what it is, we verify, and then we also attribute. So sometimes if it is if it's not going to hurt anybody to put it up and attribute it to the Pet of the Week people at Acadia Animal Aid, we may just put it up and attribute it to them. So it's not coming from us, and that's clear to everybody. But yeah, it's usually just verify and figure out the best time, day, and channel to reach the right audience.
And do you have some mechanism of feedback so you can know if it's reaching the target or not?
We do. I mean, we look at so many analytics. I never thought I would be looking at so many numbers as a journalist. I did not get into this for the math. But every day I'm looking at analytics from Facebook. I'm looking at some of our internal analytics on our site. We're following Chartbeat. So we can tell, we can kind of get a snapshot of each message that we put on our Facebook page or each story that we publish. We can get a snapshot of who's reading that story, when they're reading it, how long they're spending in that story, what basic demographic they are. Are they watching the video? Are they watching the whole video? And then, because we use Facebook as a tool for many things, we also have to be very attentive to messages coming in on Facebook. We use it as a conversation too, so we get a lot of feedback on the things that we post and can tell some things from that.
And there is a conversation, isn't there now, Tom, more than ever before? You and I both entered the field when it was more one way, and now it's interactive.
Right. Everything that we all do is interactive. I mean, with even with us, with our group right now with Delta Media, the fact that we don't have any local news doesn't mean we don't interact with the public. And a good a good example of that, we have Le Bon Temps Relais, which is a Cajun music show on KDCG, and we serve the public in a cultural way. And by doing that, we have video that we post on our website, and we have viewers from literally all over the world that interact with us here in Lafayette or watch the program, or it's just completely changed the whole dynamic of broadcasting and television and what we do.
One of the viewers is asking, what is the key to success when communicating with the public? Would you say it's finding those local shows that will satisfy the most people?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be credible and be honest, and be genuine in terms of what you portray and how you go about that. We're like I said, an entertainment medium. However, in all my years that I've been involved in with news and news talent and news people and, in local markets, I think like Lafayette, they're good, hardworking, sincere people that are trying to do their job, and they're looking for advancement, and they live here. They serve the community, and they build that credibility and trust with the public.
Here's someone, Kristin, that's interested in news judgment. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had to write a story or report about a family member or close friend that was really not a good situation? Perhaps they were arrested or caused an embarrassing scene. How would that make you feel? This apparently is someone who's experienced the embarrassment of a close family member or friend who is being reported on by the news media.
I have had close family members and friends who have unfortunately made the news for a variety of reasons. I've never had to report on anyone, and I that is a conflict of interest, and I probably would pass it on to somebody else. I've had reporters who have had family members who, let's say police reporters, who have had family members who had some trouble with the law, and they've come to me and said, heads up, this is happening. I shouldn't be the one to report on it. But, it's kind of a fact of life. I always, one of the things that I have always lived by is, I know it's not fun to get in trouble or to be spotlighted in the media for something not positive, but we've always tried to hold ourselves to an even higher standard. So I get it, but rest assured that if someone on our staff were to find themselves in the same situation, they would get the same attention, probably more. that's our duty. We have held ourselves to that standard for a long, long time. But it's also changed the way that we report on things like that, on local crime, minor crime things, DWIs, just local arrests, and that is a result of newsrooms shrinking and having to make decisions about what they're going to cover, but also having to make decisions about how they're going to cover local arrests when they don't necessarily have the staff to follow up on them. So one thing you might notice is that on the advertiser's website, we don't publish mugshots anymore. I know that when you get arrested and get a mugshot taken, and it goes out on the internet, that changes your life. And we don't necessarily follow up on every arrest. So we don't think putting every mugshot out there is the responsible thing to do. A lot of people who get arrested and get mugshots taken, those charges are dropped. Things are dismissed. Things are pleaded down all the time. So if we're not going to follow up on it, we don't think it's very responsible to put them out there in the first place for eternity.
That's a tough call, I would think. Probably, especially if the damage has already been done and the person's been exonerated, you can only say, well, there it goes.
That's a really tough situation. And, when that happens, it's a lot of times we'll ask the person, for example, we had someone who was a teacher in a local school who was charged with inappropriate sexual behavior with a student. And those charges were completely dropped, and he was exonerated. And he called us and said, I can't get a job because it's out there. Yeah. And we had kind of brutally honest conversations where I said, it happened, the charges were made, and we reported them. Now we can report that they've been dropped and you've been exonerated, or we can report nothing because, when we bring it back up, it's going to rehash that for you. So, we'll do whatever you want us to do. We're not taking the story down because the charges were made, it was investigated, the charges were dropped, we reported what happened.
Tom, what would be your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, with my involvement in the television business and managing stations and news departments, we would have to look at things from both sides, obviously, and sometimes you got to make some judgment calls and just try to let common sense prevail. I mean, one of the things that we always tried to do, and I was involved in directly, if there was something of a controversial nature, I would be involved in editorial meetings in the morning to find out, okay, what are we doing today? How are we covering this? Who's saying this about what? There would be political matters that would come up. There would be, different things that happen in a community, but you just have to look at it from both sides. You have to cover both sides. You have to, decide how you want to report it, how you want to say it. I think that's where a lot of the, in television, that's where a lot of the writing and producing and, the skills that people have to be able to portray it in a credible way come together. So it's much the same, but you can, when you're in the media, you can get in some very dicey situations, but you just have to go back to trying to do what is right, do the right thing, and let common sense prevail in many cases, and not go any further than that.
Yeah, we're in an age of social media, and it seems like people say things that they wish they hadn't, and it goes out immediately.
Yeah.
We've just seen a national network anchor lose her job at NBC for a Halloween comment. And you would think that's a remarkable consequence to be in such a prominent position. But one unguarded, one misstatement
Right.
and there goes a career.
Mhm.
Does that strike you as fair and reasonable?
Well, whether it's fair or it's not fair, there's an executive that made a decision in their best interest of their stockholders
Yeah,
and how it's going to affect them.
that's a
And
good
that's
point.
what we all deal with is, they have to, those executives have got to provide value for their shareholders. And if it's a public company and you're going to do something to detract from that value, whether it's whoever for saying or doing what, it doesn't matter. They're going to act in the best interest of those shareholders.
Even if you apologize,
Even if you apologize, there's great people that it probably happens to every day. And that's what's maddening about a local local people like us. If you're with a network affiliate or associated with a network affiliate, you have no control over that from your network. So you're kind of associated to your network affiliation, but you really have no control of that over that in Lafayette, Louisiana.
let me ask you a question one of the viewers has about bias. And we know that the greatest deficit that media face is the constant allegation that they're not trying to be fair and impartial, that they're either usually suffering from a liberal bias, but other people say, no, that's not true at all. There's a sort of a conservative bias. Do you feel like the journalism world is doing a good enough job of being impartial and fair and objective, of guarding against their own internal bias?
I think there's such a huge difference between what's happening on the local level and what's happening on the national level. And I think that there's a lot of confusion in the public between journalists and analysts and experts who come on to voice their opinion. At the local level, we try really hard to be transparent. And, I have always said that journalists are not unbiased. We are human beings. We have had a lifetime of experiences, and that colors who we are and how we see things.
Yeah.
But we still try our best and have mechanisms in place to make sure that we are being as fair and impartial as possible. I don't let reporter X go write a story about something controversial that she has strong feelings about and then publish that story unedited. It goes through a number of people with different viewpoints. It's also one of the reasons why we strive to have a diverse staff, so that we are as reflective as possible of our diverse community, and so that we, everything that we do and everything that we publish, we have an opportunity to have people internally look at it from very diverse viewpoints. We all know, there are things that I grew up the way I grew up. I may not be as sensitive to something as you are. I didn't grow up the same way you did, so we try to have mechanisms in place. But it's difficult every day because we have people who watch the national news or who listen to to national politics, and then they apply that to the local media. And a lot of times we just have to let our work stand for itself. And, I will show headline after headline after headline. Look, we had this one on this day and we had this one on this day. So we really are trying. We're not perfect. And on the other hand, I've had people send me headlines that said, looks like you guys might need to look at both sides of the issue here. And sometimes they're right. And I appreciate that feedback. And we do, we sometimes need that nudge.
Does it ever frustrate you that sometimes the best stories just don't have enough marketability? They just wouldn't grab the public's interest, even though you say, well, we need to get this out there. And yet we're looking at the analytics that show a good story about sex and violence will just gin up your ratings, and you have to be aware of that business motive.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all driven. Everything's about eyes and ears. And people are, and media companies are trying to attract, as many people as they can. And I think it's, back when I was young, okay, so Walter Cronkite reported the news, and then you could judge for yourself what was your opinion of it. Well, now we're wrapped up in, a lot of cable news and a lot of opinionated type based programming that people construe as news. And it's just this, with social media, there's a feeding frenzy, and, people are, looking at their analytics and, trying to get, because there's revenue being generated in the digital world. And to do that, you have to have proof of performance and eyeballs or whatever you need. And, you have to be able to present that to advertisers. It's revenue driven, and those are some of the things that do that.
Yesterday, the editor of the Daily Advertiser said on these channels that newspaper would one day be gone. Newspapers were dying and would one day be gone. Is that the same for broadcasting? Is it dying and also?
Well, not just, no. I mean, as far as, looking from my vantage point, from what we do, as a local broadcaster in television, you have to remember the fact that we are a local, full power television station with KLWB, and we have other stations as well here. But it's free entertainment over the air. You can go buy an antenna and watch us over the air for free. So people want to be entertained. I think people are going to continue to watch television. There's not any television groups that I know of that are, going out of business. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of consolidation and expansion. So I think there's always going to be a place for local broadcasters and local television. And, a lot of factors will go into what makes that important for a community, and in news, local news, what people are doing in their high schools, what the weather's going to be like. There's so many things here locally that people care about that doesn't really pertain to the national type things that we see.
In our classrooms, we teach the students Marshall McLuhan's famous dictum, which is the medium is the message.
Yeah.
Seems like the medium now is video. Is that right, Chris?
Well, just to elaborate a little bit on what he is my boss, but to elaborate on what he said yesterday, I think that
I should tell who we're referring to. James.
James Flaxenhar.
Flaxenhar.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that in the future, people are not going to get their news from a piece of paper. But I also think in the future, people are not going to get their news on their TV set. I think we're all becoming digital news. When I go to college recruitment events, I don't go look for print journalists or broadcast journalists. I just look for digital journalists. I need somebody who can write, who can tell a good story, and who knows how to shoot video and produce video. So, yeah, video is definitely becoming much more important, I think, for everybody.
Much more mobile for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And there's a lot of media out there. There seems to be as much fragmentation as there are channels to watch. Is that your perception too, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I'll just say what I see every day, and there's just so many ways to consume video now. There's, what's referred to as skinny bundles, where, there's services that are popping up with, subscriber based, $15, $20 a month type things compared to what you'd pay for a full service on a service provider like cable or satellite or whatever. And, a lot of people are cutting the cord. A lot of people are changing their habits. They're going, it's kind of like what's old is new again. They're watching broadcast television over the air and, getting other content on their phones or wherever.
Okay, I see that we've just about run out of time. I want to thank our guests, Tom Poehler, and Vice President of Television at Delta Media Corporation, and Kristin Askelson, News Director and Content Strategist for the Daily Advertiser. We hope that you will visit aocinc.org to find out more about the next episode of Ask Me Anything on AOC. My name is Bill Davey. I'm a professor at UL Lafayette. We hope that you'll come and join us in Burke Hawthorne Hall, too, as a student or as an alum. And we encourage you to stay engaged and informed about our media, however you take it. Thank you for joining us.